Happy webinar day and happy spring solstice. Well, technically that was yesterday, but you get the point. Spring is here, and well, at least for us here in Arizona, it's time to put away the winter coats and bust out those cargo shorts. Ain't that right, Dad? Well, I guess I should digress. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Brad Ken, and I'm your MC for today's webinar. We are broadcasting live from our Vertical Measures office in Phoenix. At VM, we focus on building your own audience, and we help move that audience through the customer journey. In fact, you can read more about that in our new full-color 337-page digital marketing book we recently published called The Customer Journey. You can get your copy for free at vert.ms/customer-journey. You can also find the link in the GoToWebinar chat feature right now. Zach is putting it in there for you. So moving on, today's webinar is titled The Great Website Migration, Why You Should Bring an SEO as Your Guide, and will be presented by our SEO strategist, David Mang. While growing up, David thought search engines were just things that drove you around the internet. He didn't realize there was an entire world behind the search bar, or that someday he would be a part of it. Today, David is driven to learn everything he can about search engines and what makes them go. He enjoys getting into the data and creating strategies to grow clients' websites. He has worked in different areas of digital marketing, but SEO is his passion. He is always ready to have a conversation about the latest algorithm updates and Google Doodle. Before David takes us through the migration journey, I have a few quick notes to go over. This presentation will be available online tomorrow at verticalmeasures.com/webinars. We'll also shoot you an email tomorrow morning with that link. If you have any questions, shoot it over to us in the questions tab anytime throughout the webinar, and we'll try to run it by David during the Q&A. If we don't get to it during the Q&A, we will follow up with you after the webinar. And finally, we know your time is extremely valuable, but if you have a minute or two after the webinar, we ask that you fill out our quick 5-question multiple choice survey. It really helps us when it comes to planning out future webinar topics and guests. Well, that's it for me. Please welcome David.
Hello, and welcome to the Great Website Migration and Why You Should Bring an SEO as Your Guide. Today, I'll be your guide. My name is David Mang. I'm an SEO strategist here at Vertical Measures in Phoenix, Arizona. I've been here for about almost 3 years now, but I've been in the SEO industry for about 7 years. But enough about me, let's talk about today's journey. So we're going to go through today's agenda, which is going to consist of the different types of migrations and the different phases of a typical migration. The first one is how to prepare for your migration. We're going to talk about how to collect inventory of all your data and how to perform redirect mapping, how to set up 301 redirects from your old to your new. That is a very important part of any migration, so that's a big topic we're going to cover. Then next, we're going to talk about your migration day and what you're going to do as part of the overall site migration. A lot of this has been covered by the dev team, but you're also going to play a big part in this. And then after that, the migration is not over. There's a lot of things in post-migrations you're going to have to monitor. When you're monitoring, you want to make sure everything goes through to the next phase and troubleshoot any issues that may arise. But if you're ever going through a migration, you get to ask yourself, why is your website migrating? Is it worth disrupting your search engine rankings? There's a couple of different reasons why. Maybe you're just doing a rebrand. You're updating your domain or your overall brand name. Are you just updating designs to improve conversions? Are you doing this to improve rankings? We here at Vertical Measures are right there with you. In fact, we migrated our website too. We did this in 2018. So we pretty much went through the whole process of having our own brand go through this. In fact, this is us. So just let you know, we're all in this together in this great migration. If you're watching this webinar, this may be you getting ready for a big migration as well. And to prove it, we're gonna take a look at our old legacy sites. So this is our old legacy site pre-2018 in September. To the right side is our homepage. You can see that it's a very basic design. What we were really great at is providing the information. So everything is just very direct. You can find anything you want. On the bottom, you see there's list all of our services. Very typical website. On the left, it is a typical blog post. We here at Vertical Measures, big believers in content marketing, so our blogs were a big core of our business or website. But we needed a new design refresh. This seems a little outdated. We wanted to go a little bit further. We wanted to increase the conversions, and we also wanted to increase our rankings. So here is our new site. You can see there's an update. On the right is our homepage. We added a video. We wanted to add more imagery. So just to add more interactions with the user. We wanted to lead the user into the direction we wanted. So we had all these different links and images so they can click on and go to the next stage of our website. You didn't see from the old one, but this is our old site. You can see that the navigation is a little outdated as well. So we wanted to update that for that. On the left is your typical blog post. We wanted just a cleaner look. We wanted to add more call to action. So you can see on the top right, it's a contact us button. We want just to highlight that to let the user know that if you wanted help with your digital marketing, come ahead and contact us. It's a lot of different reasons why we went through, but we just did this to improve conversions and update to a new branding. To our current branding, which is a new style. Now we're going to talk about the different types of migrations. There are several types of migrations, but we're just going to cover the most common ones you typically see. The first one is a domain change or a rebranding. Facebook was not always facebook.com. Before what we know today, it was called thefacebook.com, which is because it was actually owned by the About Face Corp. So Mark Zuckerberg couldn't get that domain at the time, so they just called it The Facebook. But in 2005, they actually bought it for $200,000. And now it's just called facebook.com. And I hear they're doing pretty well today. Next is moving from HTTP to HTTPS, or otherwise known as a secure protocol. So in 2014, Google decided we're going to make this an official ranking signal. They don't do this very often, so all SEOs took notice. Then after that, websites began migrating to a secure protocol in droves. And then in 2018, they also released a Google Chrome update. So now the browsers were going to show you that they were not secure. And when a user sees a browser is not secure, they tend to get a little iffy on the website. You kind of lose a little bit of trust. So websites went ahead and started migrating. If they didn't believe the ranking signal before, they were now, because this could affect your conversions. If you see it right in the middle, Vertical Measures was actually non-secure before the migration. So we actually did this as part of our overall migrations to go to a secure. But don't worry, we are officially secure. So all that information you provided us for this webinar is now good. We're secure and up to date. Next is a platform change. This is actually pretty common. Each platform offers different benefits that cater to your business need. So if you went from WordPress to Drupal, there might be something in there that you just prefer for your business and it will just help out for your website. When you switch over to a new platform, it's not always necessary to switch URLs. So this might be just a switch over to the next platform, and we get the benefits of wanting something a little different, something better for your website. Next is a redesign. This is probably what most people think of when they're thinking of a migration. They just want to update the look, and we get it. We see brand new websites every day, and you think that could be our website. It looks really nice. I think we can do that for ours as well. This is an example of Discover credit card. This is their old design in 2017. So it's a very basic look by today's standards. All the information is there. It was kind of like what Vertical Measures did. We're just going to give you all the information you need, and you're going to find it. But then 2018, they went for a cleaner look. It's just more imagery. It's a little more basic. It just only provides you the information they thought you needed. So they went ahead and did this. They probably did the same thing that we did at Vertical Measures. They wanted to increase conversions. So everything here is leading you towards a customer journey, and going to the next site. That way they can get the conversions they want. The next type of migration is a site consolidation. This is a brand called Piperlime. It's actually one of the brands from the Gap. It started in 2006, but it was retired in 2015. So in that time, this brand accumulated all this organic equity, and you didn't want to just get rid of it and close it down. There was a lot of work to getting all those backlinks. So what they wanted to do is consolidate it by redirecting into the bigger brand. So all this domain juice went into the Gap. So that way they kept all the keyword rankings, as much of the keyword rankings as they can anyways. So that way now the Gap is still maintaining all those backlinks. All right, that was all the types of migrations. But again, there are so many more different types of migrations. Things like content changes are considered migrations. If you're adding a brand new category to your blog, or if you're adding a new service line, you're making a big change to your website. Those are different types of migrations. But the one type of migrations you should always be thinking about is, are you going to be updating your URLs? This is the big one. You're going to reconstruct how the Google reads your website and how it understands everything. So you want to consider this first and foremost. Are you going to be updating your URLs? I would recommend avoid it if you can. Like if you're going through that platform change, you just want to update the back part of your website, then fine. Try to keep it if you can. But if you are changing URLs, make sure the keyword potential is there. And if it's there, it's too good to pass up, go ahead and change it. A migration is the best time to make any major changes to your website. We actually did the same thing here at Vertical Measures. So these were our blog categories. This is the Measures blog categories. There are too many categories, and even worse, there were too many directories. So just to give you an example, we had /content, /content marketing 2, /internet marketing 2, /local. Those are just examples of just going a little too much with the categories, and you're just confusing Google by having just too many different directories, and you're telling them there's multiple places where these pages can go. But really, we're only talking about these 8 basic categories. So in the after part, you can just see that these are our new ones. We consolidate everything just to make it a little easier. So let's take a look at old URLs. So you can see internet marketing and then -2 was one of our categories. We had to add the -2 because it was a limitation of our platform. It just didn't work right, so we just added that. And it just didn't look pretty. It's a waste of characters. The goal for any URL is to make it as short as possible. That way it just doesn't get long. You're not diluting the keywords in there, and it's just a better to look for it. Our new URLs is a little prettier. See, we put it all into the blog, which update internet marketing to digital marketing. And so example right here, the 15 questions to ask when hiring an internet marketing company now belongs in that category, and it belongs in the blog directory. When you're creating URLs, you need to tell Google a story. So this story is, this blog post about 15 questions is a digital marketing post, and it is an article inside the blog and in our overall domain. When you provide a story to Google, it's easier for them to rank your web page for what you want. So make sure you're telling a story. So again, when you migrate, make sure you're telling a story, and if it's worth it, if you're doing this already, then you might not need to change it. But for us, we really need to organize our blog. So this is a major change, and we decided to go for it. The potential was too great, and we did it. All right, and now we're talking about migration day, or pre-migration, how to prepare for your migration. Because remember, when your site is gone, it is gone. You can recover it, but that's a lot of work. It might not be worth it. So take an inventory of everything you can. So we're going to go ahead and just start talking about that. All right, let's talk about expectations. Set your expectations with your boss, your client, whoever you need to talk to, and just tell them the goal is to maintain organic traffic levels. That is the overall thing. From an SEO standpoint, you want to keep everything you built up and make sure the new website has that as well. Remember, every migration is unique. We went through different types of migrations, but remember, there's more to it. Even if it was a simple redesign, some things may take longer. Your website might be really big, so there could be a little more work. So remember, everything's a little different. You're gonna have to customize every migration. We have a process here, vertical measures, but we're often updating to cater to the website's needs. So remember, an HTTPS migration is really different from an overall site structure overhaul. So maintain those expectations with their clients. Remember, date estimates are estimates for a reason. Things change, things happen. If someone gives you a 2-month estimate on a site redesign, kind of say, okay, that's cool, that's a good estimate, but we're gonna stay flexible. We know things happen, we understand, but just be ready. Every migration, you have to be ready for the big change. And remember, keep communications lines open as a big part of it as well. Traffic drops are likely. Only on the migration day, those are the most likely times to see a little bit of traffic drop. So this is the reason why there's likely to be a traffic drop is because you're reconstructing how Google sees your website. You're adding these new URLs and you're trying to transfer your old ones. So right now you're splitting the organic equity in half. So there's going to be fluctuations in your website. And when those fluctuations happen, you're probably going to see a small drop. You're going to see a small drop in your organic traffic. But don't be alarmed. If you do follow all the proper recommended best practices, your organic traffic will come back. And this is something we always tell the clients because there's always a little bit of worry about there. So just keep re-emphasizing it will come back with the proper preparations. And with that, let's go through the most common migration issues. All right, the big one, poor redirect strategy. A poor redirect strategy can really ruin your migration and really ruin your organic traffic. So you built up this new site, it looks really pretty, it's built in your image, everything is really nice, but you never redirected your old organic equity to your new website. So you're pretty much telling Google, I'm gonna start over. And unless you're a really big brand like Facebook, you're gonna have a really hard time recovering all that traffic. So make sure everything is covered. We're gonna talk more about that later because that is a big topic. Troubleshooting response times. Things happen. So you need to be quick to identify the problem and solve it quickly, which leads us to the next one, poor communication. Make sure you have an open line between you, your dev team, your account managers, your project managers. Make sure you are quick to talk and make sure you guys are ready to tackle any issues. But sometimes there's just a lack of resources. Sometimes it's just a one-man dev team who's doing all the work. So you have to understand things might take a while, but just make sure you're in communication with everybody, and that way you can handle these lack of resources by making things go smoothly and not cause any bottlenecks. And lastly, your new website is not SEO friendly. You put a lot of work into creating your website, but if it's not ready to be optimized, it's not ready to handle everything from your old one, your website's not going to perform well. So you really have to make sure your next website is SEO friendly. And with that, let's talk a little more about that. So when you migrate to an SEO friendly website, make sure your site structure is there. So we talked about this earlier, when you're redoing your site structure, make sure it's properly done. Make sure you're telling a story, having a logical hierarchy from your root domain to your directories, to your categories, and then the actual page. Make sure it's telling a story to let Google know how to rank the website. If your old website has everything off the root domain, that is time to update the site structure. Because remember, migrations are the best time to make major changes to your website. Carry over all the metadata. The metadata is your lifeline. You're telling Google what this page is about. And if you're starting over for all your metadata, you're telling them this is probably going to be a little different. It's slightly different. You're going to make your rankings fluctuate just a little too much. So you want to make sure everything is carried over. Once it's carried over, then you can make some adjustments and make sure everything is good and optimized for the future. Carry over the content. That is a big one. So your website, let's say it's 10 years old or something, but in the last 10 years, your company has evolved to have newer things, new service lines. So we get the appeal of wanting to update the content to match your new company. But if this page is ranking for a lot of really good keywords, carry over the content. That's what's been driving your old website's traffic for a long time. Carry it over and then make the changes that you need. But the one time you can make a little more changes is if you notice this page was not ranking pretty well. So then you can make some changes. Go ahead and update the content and make sure it's optimized towards the keywords you do want to rank for. So remember, majority of the time, carry over the content, carry over the metadata. This is the core of your website. Site speed. So your new websites tend to be more image heavy, so it's a little slower. There's a lot of different gadgets. We get the appeal of wanting to have every feature possible, but remember, do not let it perfect your site performance. If your new site is slow, it's not going to rank well. Site speed as a confirmed ranking algorithm by Google. They don't give these confirmed ranking algorithms too often, so we take them seriously. So make sure your new website is performing well for speed. All right, adding structured data. Structured data is providing more information to the search engines that they might not get from what's on your web page. So if, let's pretend you have an article, you're going to put structured data on there that says this is an article. Or if you're a local business, let's say you're a restaurant or something, add a local business schema type to your website. It's just another way to provide Google more information about your website, and it helps you rank better because it puts you in front of the right keywords. Next, canonicals. Make sure all your pages have canonical tags. This is the best way to prevent duplicate content. Some people like to add tracking to the end of URLs, but canonical helps prevent that if you do it properly. So this way, it helps prevent duplicate content. All right, next, document everything. Once your site is gone, it's gone. So make sure you keep a record of everything. We wangered our website a while ago, but I still reference our old documents all the time, just to make sure if I ever see something's falling off, I was like, what would we do it before that we're not doing now? So make sure to keep a document of everything. And you can put this in a simple spreadsheet if you wanted, because the main thing you're gonna do to document everything is you wanna crawl the site. Use a program like Screaming Frog. This is probably one of the more popular programs out there to crawl your website. So use this to crawl for URLs. Keep an inventory of all your URLs. If you miss something on the next site, make sure it's matching your old URLs. Crawl for the canonicals. Each canonical has the exact tag that has the website on there. So we want to make sure that you're matching it to the new ones. The meta robots. The meta robots tell you if you want to index this page or not index this page. So keep a record. If you see that this page on your next website is indexed for some reason and you're wondering why, check the old one. Maybe it wasn't supposed to be indexed. Just helps you keep the match. All right, internal linking. So we've seen this with some of our client sites, mostly with the main navigation menu. You're moving on to a new website, you're updating the main navigation, and you may be losing some internal links from your main navigation. So you may be losing site-wide internal linking. And then the next website, you notice this page doesn't rank well anymore, but then we notice it's not in the main navigation, which loses all your internal linking. So, and that's a big part of how you rank as well. So that may be a reason. So keep an inventory of how many pages have internal linking to this page. That may be a reason in the future of why you saw a traffic drop for a particular page. Keep an inventory of all your images. And those images, those are pretty much keeping a tab on the alt text and the file name. So if you had an image ranking, check that and just make sure it's all matching. Lastly, the metadata. Again, carry over all the metadata just to make sure you're matching everything from old to new. All right, the performance benchmarks. This is probably one of the best ways to troubleshoot any issues post-migration. Take a look at your web traffic analytics. If you see that your traffic is down a little bit, you want to take a look at your web traffic analytics, see which page did we actually lose organic traffic on. So keep a benchmark of this. We typically ask for about a year over year, so about almost like 2 years of your organic traffic, just to see where everything's coming from and see how you're performing. For typical finding pages, probably a little shorter, 6 months, maybe even 30 days, depending on how well your site is. If you're a really high performing website, then maybe not as much, like 30 days will probably work. Next, your keyword ranking. So this is important. You want to make sure you have a record of all the keywords you are ranking for. If you saw this page had 5 page 1 ranking keywords, then your next website, you only see these only 2. We want to find out what keywords those were. That way, in your new website, let's optimize to get those keywords back. Because at one point, Google viewed your web page as a strong web page for that one keyword. So now we can re-optimize in their new site if we need to. Take an inventory of page load times. Let's say you have a web page that loaded in 4 seconds. Your next website should have that page loading in 4 seconds or better. If it's slower, there may be a reason why you lost some traffic for that page. So take a good inventory of what pages, how fast they loaded for those pages. You don't need every single page, so just take a couple from each section of your website. Typically, templates that look the same. All right, now your staging site. It's time to review your staging site. This is probably your first look at your new website. So when that happens, take a look at everything, and we're gonna we're gonna find some things that may have issues, some things to really look for. All right, the first thing you should always do, absolutely always look for, is to restrict the search engine access to your staging site. This happens far too often. Dev just puts it out there, but they let it open for everyone to see. And now the Google search engine bots are coming to your site, they're indexing everything. And when they do that, it's pretty much a duplicate website of your old one. You're gonna see that you might have a rankings drop in your older website if you're not ready to fully migrate. So make sure there's no extra website that's the exact match of yours on the Google index. All right, so crawl for these things. So first one, check for broken internal linkings. When you update the site structure, some things may not have changed over. So make sure to crawl and check for all the broken links on there. Redirect chains. When you set up your redirects, these redirect chains might happen. So a redirect chain is taking multiple hops to get to the final page. So let's say you clicked on page A, but now there is going from page A to page B to page D, then E, but really you just need to update the internal linking to point from A to D. That way you're reducing your page load times and you're making the site faster. Next, the metadata. Make sure everything is carried over from the previous sites. This is the time to check for it. Check for canonicals. Make sure every page has a canonical tag. The meta robots we talked about earlier, make sure those thank you pages are no index. Make sure those landing pages are no index. Make sure it's all there. Just do a quick check. And then check for structured data. For all the SEOs on the webinar, there's a new feature in Screaming Frog. You can now check for structured data, and they'll actually pull out which schema types that page is ranking or that page has. So if you had a page that had an article tag, an organization tag, local business, or whatever you guys have, it'll actually pull it into Screaming Frog. It's actually a really cool feature that us SEOs are nerding out about. All right, check for an XML sitemap. This is a list of URLs you want Google to index. So make sure everything is in there that you want to get indexed. And then during migration day, this is going to be an important part of getting Google to recognize your new website, is submitting the XML sitemap. So just make sure your XML sitemap is there. Check for a Google Analytics tracking code or whatever analytics you're using. Just make sure it's there on every website. This actually happened once or twice before where the dev team just forgot to put the tracking code, but it's a quick, easy fix. Just tell them to put it in the head and it's all there. That way you can check to make sure it's actually working properly. And if you use Google Analytics, you can actually check in real time that your presence is there as a user. So go ahead and click on your website, go to the next stage and keep going from page to page and make sure that in Google real time, they are following your movements. Check for page load times. Remember, your new site tends to be really heavy with images, so make sure you're loading quickly. All right, check for mobile friendliness. This hasn't been as big as an issue before as we get further away from having separate mobile sites, and most web redesigns have a responsive design, but you just want to make sure that all your pages are mobile friendly. Things like make sure your font size is big enough to read on a smartphone. Make sure the content doesn't go past a typical resolution for a smartphone. These things determine if you are mobile friendly in Google's eyes. Speaking of mobile, let's talk about AMP. If you're going to have AMP on your web pages, this is the time to check. Make sure all the proper linking is there, going from your regular page to your AMP page. Just make sure everything is working properly. If you're using a plugin like for WordPress or something, make sure it's all adjusted to match whatever you had in your old site. All right, the big one, redirect mapping. This is what's going to make or break your website migrations. And depending on how big your website is, this could take the longest, or it can be really quickly, or it can be done real quick. All right, first advice I would give you, do not begin mapping until URL structure is set. You don't want to do half your redirects and then all of a sudden have to switch back because you wanted to add different categories and now you're updating what you have already mapped before. So just make sure your URL structure is set and then go ahead and start transferring over. All right, you don't have to bring all your pages over. Determine what pages are worth it. I'm going to go through the 3 different types that we use here to determine, is this page worth setting a redirect for? First one, organic traffic. You have to determine yourself, is this page getting enough traffic to where if I lost all the organic traffic, will it hurt my website? So go ahead and take an inventory of all your top performing or landing pages for organic traffic and add it to a spreadsheet. This is what we do here. We take all these top pages and we just add them on and we kind of build a list from there. Next one, backlinks. Remember, backlinks are the currency of the internet. The more quality backlinks you have, the better your website will rank. So if you have a page that has a lot of backlinks going to it, that is a valuable page. We don't want to lose it. So go ahead and add it to that spreadsheet and from that list we're building. Next, check the keyword rankings for those pages. These pages sometimes don't have organic traffic, sometimes they don't have backlinks, but the content works really well. And let's say you have a page ranking on page 2 or 3, but it's not quite getting traffic. Google sees this page as a quality page. You're just not quite there yet. You might need some more optimization or backlinks, but it's almost there. So take an inventory of those. And then once you migrate to the new site, go ahead and start optimizing those pages. You might be able to get into page 1 and where it will get organic traffic. So don't lose all those pages that are almost there. All right, use a 301 permanent redirects. Google says you can use a 302 temporary redirects now, but we like to stay with what's been working. We actually had a client accidentally use a 302 redirects for all their migration transfers. The traffic actually maintained, so there is some logic to that theory from Google, but we noticed the index took a little longer than what it typically does with a 301 redirect. We know that a 301 permanent redirect works well. It works faster. So we always want to maintain, just use a 301 redirect. It's not that much different from setting up the settings for your redirects. So go ahead and keep using that. Check your legacy redirects to avoid redirect chains. So people always forget when you're sending these redirects, your site already has a list of redirects. So check those to make sure they're all still relevant. Add on to those old ones if you need to. You don't want to accidentally create a large redirect chain if you didn't have to. So go ahead and check those old ones and just keep adding on to that. All right, test the redirects on the staging site. You should not wait until the site is live to officially test these redirects. This is where the bulk of the works of testing is going to be coming from. During migration day, you're still going to want to do it one last test of all your redirects to make sure everything goes through, but the bulk of your testing should be done on your staging sites. Make sure to check for it all ends up at a live 200 found page. Make sure there's no redirect chains, unnecessary hops in between these redirects, and just make sure it's all done here. This is the bulk of where your testing will be done. And with that, you made it to migration day. Migration day, we're going to talk about how to do your parts. Migration day, most of the work has to be done by your dev team, but you still play a major role in how you get from your website from A to B. So let's just go ahead and go through the checklist. So your site's going to be down for a little bit. It's very natural. This happens all the time. It'll probably throw up a 503 servers unavailable status code, which is telling Google, hey, our site's down for maintenance, come back later. But when it does come back, or when your site is live, go ahead and check for these things. First one, allow the search engines to crawl. This happens way too often where your site is up, you're excited, everything's done, all the hard work is finally here, but you forgot to let Google in. You had to start letting them in and start indexing everything, let them check out your new sites, make sure it's all properly there. We told you before how to block it, your staging site. Now go ahead and fix or update that. Check your robot tags to allow crawling, or to remove the no index tags if you went that way. So just make sure your website is available to the search engines. Do one last check of your redirects. Make sure everything is working properly. Sometimes your redirects didn't update it properly, so you just want to do one last check. All right, report any errors. This could be a really long list, or it could be a really short list, but make sure you report these errors to your dev team. They'll appreciate it. They don't want to find something 2 months down the road that you could have been fixed right here. So remember, one of those things, keep your communication lines open. Report any errors. And even if it's not an SEO error, just a small maybe image thing or whatever you find, just report them all. They'll appreciate it. All right, once everything's ready, you checked out your implementations of redirects, all your errors, everything's allowed to crawl, go ahead and submit that XML sitemap to Google Search Console or Bing Webmaster Tools. They're still a search engine. Last time I checked, I think Bing Webmaster Tools, or Bing in general, it's about 10% of web traffic. So go ahead and grab that last 10%. Pro tip, you can submit a temporary sitemap now of all your old URLs. When you do that, you're telling Google, go ahead and crawl all these old URLs. They'll update the index quicker that way. They'll kind of crawl those and just transfer all the organic equity you built up. So that was a fast way to go ahead and transfer everything. All right, and if you're switching domains like the facebook.com, use the change of address tool. This is a way to kind of just tell Google, hey, we have a completely new domain, but we're pretty much the same brand. So go ahead and switch over all these organic equity to our new websites. All right, post-migration and why you have to monitor everything. The hard part, it's mostly over, but you're not quite done. There's gonna be a lot of things that kind of just trickle in. It won't happen all right away, but make sure to monitor it and make sure everything is clear for your upcoming website. There's a lot of actually really good reports in the Google Search Console. They're going to tell you a bunch of things that they're noticing, and go ahead and take those seriously and just follow and try to correct as much as you can. Let's go ahead and talk about them. The first is the crawl error report. Remember when I told you that you don't have to bring over everything? They're probably going to get some 404s out of those. It is up to you to decide, are those important to bring over? Is this old page worth it? So they're going to tell you these crawl errors, but it's up to you to decide, am I going to create a redirect for them? Next, structured data errors. There's a report in there that tells you, hey, this is not implemented correctly. Sometimes if you're using a plugin, they're going to automatically pull some information to build up the structured data or the schema for your website, and they're not pulling new things because you pretty much updated your template or whatever platform you're using, and they're pulling the wrong data. So make sure to go ahead and check that for any errors. Mobile usability errors. This is the same thing as the mobile friendly errors. This is where Google's going to tell you, hey, your font's too small. Hey, your content goes beyond a typical smartphone resolution. So remember, Google is now mobile first indexing. So they crawl the mobile first. So this is very important to make sure it is mobile friendly. That way Google looks favorably on your website. Check for blocked resources. Sometimes if your robot text, if you didn't update it completely to match the new site, you're blocking things that should not be blocked. Just make sure you check here and make sure Google is allowed to crawl all the things that you want them to crawl. All right, the AMP reports. If you're adding accelerated mobile pages, then this is where they're going to tell you, is it properly implemented? They're going to tell you this is not working. We're not going to index your AMP page until you fix it. So this is the place to kind of find out if it's working right. All right, check your sitemap. So that thing you submitted earlier, they're going to tell you in Google that you submitted, let's say, 1,000 URLs. And they'll also tell you out of those 1,000 URLs, how many were actually indexed. So if you submit 1,000, but you notice only about 600 got indexed, something went wrong. You either created a poor sitemap and you're including things that should not be included, or there may be other issues. Maybe you're accidentally blocking some things and Google doesn't like it. So make sure that you check the sitemap, and majority of those pages that you submitted are indexed. All right, things to monitor. So this is a stage that's almost going to keep going for a while. So we updated our own vertical measurement website in 2018. I'm still monitoring things just to make sure everything is properly going over. You don't ever really stop trying to compare from your old site to your new site. So go ahead and keep monitoring this. It's up to you to how much you want to pay attention to these, but majority of the monitoring will be right after, but this is almost a forever kind of thing. All right, check your search engine index to make sure everything has been transferred to your new sites. If you look at your old website's index, check that all the old URLs has been transferred to the new ones. That way we'll just know that, okay, migration is pretty much complete. I don't see any of our old structure on your index. Check for organic traffic. So this is what's going to tell you what is working, what is not working. Check which pages have now lost some organic traffic, which ones have gained. So that's a success for your new website. Go ahead and just find out. This is going to tell you everything you need to know about how successful your migration was. Keep tabs on your site speed. This is a big one for how Google has been trending now. Google has been telling us speed is important. They've been doing things like the secure protocol algorithm update. Mobile speed has been a bit bigger factor nowadays. So make sure you have a fast website. Use these 3 programs, the Google Lighthouse, PageSpeed Insights, and GTmetrix is something we use here sometimes. It's an industry one that people tend to use. It'll tell you the kind of recommendations you need to check on to make sure your site is working properly and ways to improve your site speed. All right, and once you do all that, that is the bulk of the migration. So go ahead. This is a blog post on migrations that pretty much inspired this webinar. Go ahead and check that out. First link is the exact URL to get there, and the bottom one is a bit.ly. So in case you just need to record it real quick, if I go ahead and read this, if you are going through a migration, there's a lot of helpful tidbits in there that will really help you get through this. All right, and then this is me again, David Meng. I'm an SEO strategist. There's my email. Check out our old new website. Go ahead and just check it out, browse, do what we wanted you guys to do, and just interact with everything. Go ahead and check out our Twitter handle at Vertical Measures. You get a lot of good stuff out of there. We also have a Facebook, LinkedIn, all the typical social stuff. So go ahead and check that out. All right, let's open up for some questions.
Thank you, David. Your images throughout the webinar are so beautiful. I feel like I need to get a dog and a canoe and head out on a new vacation.
Yeah.
David and I went through our own migration together, back in 2018. I think it's something that a lot of people are scared of in a way. They're not really sure what's all involved, but it is something that, as websites become older and older and they are in need of an update, it's a migration is something that a lot of brands need. So it's helpful to have experts like you, David, offering up these webinars and this information so that they can feel comfortable and start doing it for themselves. Obviously, we have a great SEO team that can help. But aside from that, let's just jump into the Q&As. I want to start with kind of a general one from Dan. You were talking about schema types, and in our office, we kind of rattle off these acronyms or these keywords that sometimes people might need an explanation. So just really briefly, can you explain schema or how you were talking about schema types?
Yeah, so schema is another word for like kind of structured data. It's what's being used to implement the structured data. So this is a way for us as webmasters to provide more data to the search engines. So let's say you have a website that provides all of these recipes for whatever dishes you're looking for. If you ever do that, notice that there's always an image and there's always a rating. Those are search features. Most likely, some of those websites that offer these recipes added structured data, and those Google decided to reward them because now they have all this new data that they are now confidently going to rank or your website and add this to their Google search engine results page. So this is just another way to provide Google more information to comfortably put you in the right place for these keywords. I would definitely recommend adding some schema to your web pages if you can. These are important ways to just provide more data to Google.
And so Ashley, this question comes from Ashley. She actually asked it when she signed up for the webinar, and I see that she just asked it again. How important are keywords in maintaining your site's traffic during a migration?
It's pretty much everything. Remember, the main goal is to maintain your organic traffic during a migration. So make sure your keywords are all going to still rank on your next sites. You worked hard for those keyword rankings. So you don't want to lose any of them during a migration just because you want to update your message a little bit, the content, make sure it's all there. And it should be easy to maintain if you just bring over the content, the metadata, and make sure your site, things like your site performance is working well. So put a strong focus on keeping your keywords, because remember, your keywords drive your organic traffic.
So one question that we just got in, actually I was asking the same thing to myself, comes from Chase. And you mentioned submitting the old sitemap to Google when the new site goes live. Can you talk a little bit more about that, and what type of impact have you seen from doing that?
So this is actually a tip from Mueller from about a little less than a year ago. I read about this where he suggested when you're going through a migration, go ahead and create a temporary sitemap of all your old URLs. And then when you submit that sitemap to Google Search Console or Bing Webmaster Tools or whatever, they're going to go ahead and send those bots to those old URLs. And you just want to you want your old URLs to be recognized by the search engines, because that way they can go there and just update your organic equity to your new one. Sometimes if you have like an orphan page from your old site, there's not an easy way to kind of get there. But if you're just telling Google, here's an orphan page, go ahead and crawl this, transfer my organic equity. This is, we read about this results and we submit it to our own client websites. They tend to update your index quicker that way.
So this is a question that we got pre-webinar, but what is the most often overlooked, what's often overlooked during a migration that can cause an issue? Something that maybe you didn't cover during this webinar.
So we kind of talked about it a little bit, but I just really want to reemphasize like the small things like letting the crawlers onto your new website. People get so excited about migrating a website, they just totally forgot about the search engines. This is what's going to be driving your organic traffic. So make sure to allow the crawlers onto your new website. Or if you're starting a staging site, make sure to block it. People always forget, like you have to play with Google's rules to make sure your organic traffic is there. It's often overlooked, but those are small things. But the other one I always want to emphasize whenever we start these migrations, keep the communications lines open. You're gonna have these small errors. So you wanna make sure they get found and get resolved quickly. Over here at Vertical Measures, we have typically like a weekly or bi-weekly meeting just to talk about small things we found during the migrations that we want to just make sure everyone's up to date on. Sometimes these meetings goes really short, we didn't find anything, but sometimes these short meetings turn into big issues that we found and we just gotta take care of them quickly. So make sure your communication is open.
So we are already out of time. I'm just going to do one more question. This comes from Ernst. Will moving our blog to a subdomain hurt our SEO even when we do the redirects in a proper way?
So we always recommend consolidating your sites into one root domain. When you create these subdomains, you're splitting the organic equity because Google tells us to treat your subdomains almost like a new site. You're still getting the benefit of an overall root domain, but you tend to have better rankings when you consolidate to one big site. The example I showed you earlier of Gap, go ahead and check that out. If you notice, most of them have a subdomain. So like Old Navy .thegap.com. If we were their SEO agency, we'd probably recommend, hey, put them all under one big one. But we understand that is not always possible. Sometimes you want to create these subdomains to have flexibility between upgraded site, but we always say put them under one root domain. So if you do the proper migrations and doing from A to B, you're doing it the right way. It's almost just best practice to maintain what you have, but if you can, put them under all one root domain.
All right, so that's all the time we have for questions today. Thanks again, David, for presenting a great webinar. For those still listening, this is a common question that we get all the time, and it's just a reminder that we will be sending out the recording of this webinar and the slides early tomorrow morning, so keep a lookout for that email. There's a few questions that we weren't able to get to during the webinar today, so keep a lookout. We're gonna reach out to you guys individually and get you the answers you deserve. So for next month, we have one of the best SEO teams in the country, so we're going to double up with another SEO webinar. We're really excited for our Senior Director of SEO, Jim Bader, to present. Registration will begin in early April and continue throughout the month. Until then, I'm Brad from Vertical Measures, and hope your bracket doesn't get busted. Thanks, David.
Thank you.